Hello and welcome to another edition of True Options Masters Crypto Claptrap. I'm Chris Cimarelli. We've got our managing editor, Mike Merson, in the room as well. And we haven't done one of these in a little while, Mike. It's been a very busy couple of months for us, but it's also been a very busy couple of months in the crypto markets. And I know we've got quite a bit to talk about.
Yes, we have quite a packed agenda today. Thanksgiving holidays, and a lot of other big important projects we're working on here at True Options Masters. But we're back to it, and it's a really exciting time to be talking about crypto. So should I just get right into it? Share my screen. Let's looking at some charts. All right. I know you, Mr. Cimarelli, wanted to talk about your favorite. Let's call it an altcoin.
I wouldn't know. I don't know if I'd call it my favorite, but anyone who watched this little program we do last time might recall that I made this silly, wacky, out there projection that SHIB, Shiba Inu coin, the most successful Dogecoin ripoff, would be the next coin to get added to Robinhood. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but literally days after we put this thing out, the entire internet just went crazy speculating and projecting on this rumor that SHIB was going to be the next coin added on Robinhood. And I think you're pointing to roughly whereabouts that happened, Mike.
Yeah, it must have been. I mean, I'm just looking at this big candle here after.
Yeah, it was definitely there in late October, maybe early November. So I don't know if, some executives at Robinhood, maybe they were watching our silly little dinky YouTube video with our full 300 views and realized we were on to something. No, but I thought that was just a really obvious projection to make based on the amount of money that Robinhood made on Dogecoin transactions, of which in the early part of last year, I'm sure I had a lot to do with that. You're welcome, Robinhood.
Yeah.
Was trading Dogecoin like crazy at the start of this past year. But obviously SHIB has been in a little bit of a reversal ever since then. So it has fallen, has it fallen over 50% from its high?
Oh, a little bit indeed. Let's go from the candle top. I mean, it went as low as 67% lower, and it's currently around 58% lower from its all-time peak.
So it went all the way up to 80, 88 there. I sold out around 58, 60. Right before I thought probably that last big candle top there, in that wave. So I got out maybe a week before its top, which is about as well as you can hope to do. I think I made like 600% on the thing, and I was just telling people, just like, I'm not buying back in until it gets into the 30s levels. And where are we now, Mike?
We
are in the 30s.
Yes,
of course, 0.0000. Yes,
3671. Is where SHIB is trading.
There's actually an investment you can get. I think I have it on eToro, where it basically it's SHIB times like 1,000 or 10,000 or something. So it actually looks like it's 36 cents or something to make it a little bit more readable for people. I think that's a little bit funny, and it just sort of showcases how just absolutely ridiculous this market is. But that's why we love it.
I know.
So I don't think SHIB goes a lot lower than here, Mike.
Yeah,
I think it probably operates a little bit like Dogecoin. And when I was trading Doge, I would write it up 500%, sell, let it de-escalate 60, 70%. And we've seen that here. We've seen a de-escalation of about 2/3 of its price. I think it's going to settle out probably in the mid 30 range here. It's going to probably retest 30, 32 range, but I think this is a good point to start buying back into SHIB. I don't mean load up all at once.
Right.
I think it's a good time to start buying it again. Don't buy this stuff all in one plug or slug. Now is a good time to begin throwing some money back into the hat.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously you could do a lot worse price-wise than what we're seeing with today's levels, but there's actually some pretty solid technical evidence, at least more on the short term. So you can see that SHIB's previous all-time high, when it really started to pick up on people's radars back in early October, was around where we're trading today, just a little bit lower. So we've been trying to break through this level, and it's held pretty firmly. So you see we have some big wicks left behind on these candles. We even rallied a little bit, looked like we were coming out of a downtrend. And then, of course, the most recent week has happened, which is put a dent in things. Now, the various moving averages I have up here I want to talk about because they're a pretty good, much more shorter term trading indicator. So if we go down to the
now before you get to that, Mike, there is one
sure.
point I want to make. I don't know what just happened to your chart there. Okay, now we're good, I think. I think. Are we still on SHIB?
Yes.
Okay, so it's maybe not necessarily clear from the chart you just showed, but from the candlesticks, but basically where it's leveling out now was, I would say, like its first plateau in its last rise. So, I mean, you could look at SHIB as having had 2 jumps, and it's basically lost the second jump, but it's leveling back out. And that's usually what happens with this stuff. It doesn't go back down to 0. It goes back down to usually when it just got completely out of hand. So that middle horizontal yellow line, you can't really tell from the candlesticks that it runs through back in, I guess that's November or late October, I think.
Yeah, so early October is, I have this line around the top of its first big pump. And then you see that we've been bouncing off of that a little bit here. We haven't closed a candle below that level since before we broke through it.
Right.
And SHIB investors seem to be, pretty happy about its price here, at least the bulls.
So go ahead with what you were saying on moving averages.
Right. So these 3 moving averages that I'm looking at, it's the 9-day EMA, the 50-day simple MA, and the 20-day EMA. On the daily chart, of course, that's going to change depending on what chart you're using. This is a really good indicator of essentially like fairly short-term uptrends and downtrends. This works on stocks, this works on crypto. But what I do want to point out is that SHIB, the shorter term moving averages, so you have the 9 in pink and you have the 20 EMA in blue, they crossed below the longer term 50 MA all the way back here in, this is an hourly chart. So we've been chopping around this level quite a lot. But you can see that when we pop above these 2 shorter term moving averages, pop above the longer term moving average, we get these nice rallies. We see it here, we see it here, and we just crossed above that moving average once again. So if we're able to hold above this 50 period MA, because we're on the hourly chart, it's a 50-hour MA, I definitely foresee SHIB continuing to be a little strong here. We could reach all the way back up into the 40s potentially. But like Chris said, make this a short-term trade. This is one to trade, not to own. It has a little bit more utility than Dogecoin in that it has an actual decentralized exchange and an NFT marketplace and all these things. But at the end of the day, it's a joke coin. You don't want to go all in on a joke ever, as far as I'm concerned. So that's your call, Chris. You want to see SHIB above the 30 handle.
I do indeed. And look, I'm going to try and make another 500% on this thing, so I can start buying here. It may flatten out, level out for another month or so, and then maybe start going up again. We're going to have to see a little bit more, let's just say less fear of the crypto markets for that to start happening again. But, at this point, a lot of the marketplace has moved on from SHIB, and that's often when you want to start buying.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could say that this thing, I'm going to expect it to probably run up to that 20.
Yeah, that's about where you need to get for a 500% move. That would put it at the 3rd decimal point. We'd have a solid digit in there. That would be, I guess you'd have to call it 18 instead of 3 if that's how we're looking at it today. And that's what Chris is looking for. So
and honestly, I think that's probably the minimum we can probably expect to see from it.
Minimum.
I really think that. Yeah.
Mr. Cimarelli, you're not thinking about market cap here. You're worrying me.
No, I'm not thinking about market cap at all, because I can tell you what, the people investing in this thing sure aren't thinking about market cap either.
I think that would put it in like the top 5 of all crypto assets.
Well, I'll look at Dogecoin and got into the top 4.
No kidding. Yeah. Markets can stay rational or irrational longer than you can stay solvent, as the old maxim goes. So let's talk about more price action, because
let's put this stupid dog down. Let's move on to something else.
So sad. All right, let's zoom in a little bit here on, let's say, the weekly Ethereum chart, or rather, let's take a look at the daily. So I've been playing around with some downtrend lines. You see I've marked off the Black Friday sale here. That was obviously a pretty nasty candle to the downside. Oh, what the heck was
Yeah,
it?
some Black Friday indeed.
About a 13% move in a single day. And what I want to point out is that this is on an asset that's worth $500 billion. That doesn't happen very often. You know, there are big companies out there that don't move like this, which just points to the incredibly speculative nature of this entire asset class. All of it is insanely overvalued. And that's why we have these huge swings. That and the fact that there's margin trading happening. So when people get liquidated, that causes the price actually to go down further, causing further liquidations on margin trading. And it just becomes a giant disaster.
I got a margin call. I was at a wedding this past Friday, and so I wasn't checking my Robinhood, and I sure enough, I got a margin call. I had to sell some crypto over the weekend so I could get it covered.
Yeah, that'll happen. It'll happen to the best of us. I mean, the markets have been really volatile lately in the legacy markets as well as what we're seeing in cryptocurrency. But I kind of want to just look at the ETH downtrends lines that I have here and kind of paint a picture of where I think we could head, hopefully thinking bullishly in the short term. So we have this downtrend that's pretty solid going back from the top in early November when we were all dancing and ETH was at almost $4,900. So ETH started selling off, tried to reclaim that downtrend, got smacked on Black Friday. I mean, just utterly demolished. We went all the way back to the previous all-time high that we set. Well, not the previous all-time high exactly, but the average level we traded around on a more short-term basis there. That's that green line that you see here. We rallied off it. We got above that line, and we actually put in a higher high. And then this past week happened, which December 4th would have been Sunday, where we saw this massive wick left behind on Ether on the daily chart. Now we're seeing some more carry through, and we're coming up against this second downtrend line that I've been playing with, going off the huge Black Friday candle.
I'll tell you, over this past weekend when I was watching these down movements. I basically opened the app when it was at its bottom, and I was just devastated that I didn't have more money to put in.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, oh, it's just such a good buying opportunity. And then, of course, yeah, you look at what's happening in Ethereum today, and it was correlating moves in the stock market today, and S&P 500 up 2%. But
I know that feeling. I did a lot of buying on Black Friday, but I missed this past Cyber Sunday, we'll call it. But what I do want to point out is this huge wick we left behind on the Ethereum daily chart. Huge wicks on candles like this are extremely bullish because it means that there was so much buying interest below this green level here that people pushed it all the way back up so that it was, I mean, practically it was higher than the wick from the previous day. So that's a very bullish sign.
Yes,
now,
where a consolidated candle like that with such a long wick, it tells you what the price direction is.
Exactly. We tend to run away from these wicks when we see them. So I personally anticipate higher Ether prices. I think we could crack 5K before the year is out if things start to look really bullish. There are some resistances we have to break though. So here you can see we stopped right on this downtrend line that connects this high with this high. And then today we traded above it for a little bit, but now we're coming back to retest. So that feels healthy to me. And this really kind of feeds into my theory that the crypto cycles are lengthening and potentially lengthening significantly. So in terms of the halvening, which is when Bitcoin issuance goes by half, which is something that happens every few years, and based by the bear market bottom of the last cycle, we're currently in a longer cycle in Bitcoin by a number of weeks. So we're already in a longer cycle than we've ever seen before. And I think there's some credence to the theory that the cycle is going to lengthen based on the relative volatility of all these assets kind of coming down. More institutional money is at play. The threat of regulation isn't as strong because there is so much institutional money at play. And I think we could potentially see this bull market go well into 2022. I personally think a bear market could start as early as March 2022. But ideally, this thing runs through the summer and potentially even into the winter. Purely for the fact that the market's never going to do what you expect it to do. Everyone expected Bitcoin to go to 300K by December of this year or Q1 of next year. And that hasn't happened. We're nowhere close to that. So I think the longer that the cycle goes on, the longer we see these mega consolidation periods, the better ultimately for the prices in the long run, because we won't get those huge blow off tops that everyone falls over themselves to sell and just trips over their losses on the way out, what have you. So there was a lot there in terms of price action, but one thing we did want to highlight, and this is something that you could potentially take advantage of. We'll start by saying we're not tax lawyers. We don't know anything professionally about taxes, and we cannot recommend you do anything because we're not financial advisors either. But as of right now, until the end of the year, cryptocurrencies are not subject to the wash sale rule. So the wash sale rule is a rule that prevents you from selling an asset for a capital loss in order to write it off on your taxes and then buy it back immediately to realize the loss and then get back into the position you want to be in. Currently, in stocks and other securities like that, you need to wait 30 days. But that currently does not apply to cryptocurrency. But with the Build Back Better Act, that's going to close that tax loophole. So you have until the end of the year to take advantage of this. Once again, do your own research, make sure that this makes sense for you. But if you have losses in some crypto assets and you want to write those off in your taxes, that might be something to start looking at. And I think it's why we've seen so much aggressive selling towards the end of the year, because it's either people realizing this or people thinking that the wash sale rule does impact cryptos, which would explain a lot of the selling we saw at the end of November, right before the 30 days rule would kick in. So that's just a couple theories.
So I completely agree with you, Mike, and I have a couple of takeaways here. Mm-hmm. So one, yes, you absolutely want to use this opportunity to sell with any losses that you have. So me personally, I'm up way big on Ethereum. I'm not selling it because I made so many capital gains at the start of this year in this crypto bull run that I am still net positive for the year on my closed trades. Mm-hmm. So what I took the opportunity to do the last couple of days, and maybe I shouldn't say this on something that's going to be published on the internets, but I'm going to do it anyway, is I sold a lot of my positions. Like I was down, I'm going to be real with you, I was down almost 20K in my Dogecoin investment. So I just sold it yesterday and then I immediately bought it back. And there's a lot of people doing this because they understand that, you know, we're about to lose this opportunity at the end of this year, literally less than a month away. And if you just go into Google right now and you just look up crypto wash sale rules, you're going to see a ton of articles that have been written just in the last week. So put two and two together. This is probably why we saw so much selling the last, Black Friday and then this past weekend. With that said, here's the flip side of it. Now that people aren't going to be able to do this anymore, this is a very, very good thing for the crypto markets. This is a sign of the crypto markets becoming more mature, and it will decrease volatility. Now, obviously, there's two sides of the coin of volatility. You want enough volatility for things to move exponentially higher. On the flip side of it, things can fall very, very, very fast. We've seen that in the cryptocurrency markets. And it's not to say that volatility is going to disappear, but we have this situation right now where someone can sell a large chunk of their cryptocurrency and apply it to their capital losses to reduce their tax that they have to pay, and immediately buy it back, creating just enormous volatility of this market just having no idea what to do with itself. So now that people are going to be forced to, when they sell, and if they want to count it towards capital loss, they're now going to have to wait 30 days to buy back into it. Which, what does that mean, Mike? It means people aren't going to be as fast to sell anymore.
Yes. And I think even on a more macro level, that will cause a lot more recognition towards these assets being a lot more like stock securities. And with that recognition and with that treatment of them as more like stock securities, it's going to decrease the volatility. Again, over time, I still anticipate this to be a very volatile market for at least the next 5 years. But in time, as the recognition builds, you're going to see less volatility in crypto assets over time. That's my personal prediction.
Yeah, I mean, if you consider, cryptocurrencies to be almost overall as speculative as microcap stocks, now they're maybe going to be as speculative as small cap stocks. Still pretty speculative. But as we keep trailing this thing out, I mean, eventually, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum, like 10% drops in 3 to 5 years probably will not be very common. I mean, overnight. I should say overnight.
Yes, exactly. I do think we will go through these boom and bust cycles in crypto, and they'll be much more frequent than we'd see in stocks, simply because there's no feds purchasing corporate Bitcoin bonds, at least for now, whatever that could potentially mean. Who knows how weird the future can get. But right now, this is a market that is driven by individual speculators, a little bit of institutions, and that's why you're seeing such emotional trading, even on such large cap assets. Now, you mentioned Ethereum and Bitcoin before. I'm going to use that as a sloppy segue to look at the Ethereum Bitcoin chart. Now, this is a chart that only I seem to care about, but this is Ethereum's price performance against Bitcoin, not market cap. So what this essentially means is that with this at 0.08, Ethereum is worth 0.08, or about 8% of Bitcoin in terms of nominal price. Now, this is like the most watched chart when it comes to comparing these two assets for many good reasons, because it's tended to predict rather pretty significant altcoin rallies in the past. So the way I've organized this is I've done some fairly careful labeling of, except that my ETH BTC tag is covering this up. But these are the significant levels that ETH BTC needs to reach in order to, and break through in order to set new highs, which a lot of people are anticipating. I personally do think Ethereum is going to be the #1 crypto asset within the next 5 years. And that will be a significant turning point in crypto. But we're not anywhere near there yet. This is just an idea of where we would need to get for that to happen. So if you take a white line that pretty much connects this all-time high that we set back in mid-2017 all the way to now, you see that we have a very nice progression all the way through the recent action, and a really significant breakout that occurred just last week. So we broke out of this downtrending white line after being well supported by this white line going all the way back to early or late 2016. And now we're trying to hold over the May 2018 high, which was back here. So I think this is a highly significant breakout. What does worry me, and I'm not sure that things like momentum indicators work on ratio pairs, but you do have some bearish divergence on these charts. So we might see a bit more of a correction, and we might see the ratio pair come all the way back in around this level. But this breakout is macro significant in my view, and you want to be heavy in Ether for the large caps and heavy in alts that are built on Ether in terms of the small caps. Now, there's opportunities outside that ecosystem, which we're actually going to talk about in a little bit, but I had to point out this breakout because it's one of the most significant definitive breakouts we've seen in a while. Could it fake out? Absolutely. We need this candle that I'm pointing at right here to confirm in that this needs to close green on the week in 5 days and 5 hours in order for this breakout to really, really look good.
Now, on the other hand, Mike, you know, you're pointing out RSI here, and it looks like that the last few times we've seen significant volatility or extended volatility, RSI was above 70, and we're not there right now.
No, not currently. That is the other way of looking at RSI, right? Like, we're at higher ratio levels now, and we're not as overbought as we were at previous ratio levels. So I struggle with that constantly.
Because on the one hand, we're higher on less strength,
right,
but at the same time, that might mean that investors might have more appetite for risk, or we haven't, you know, finished working out our muscles yet.
Exactly. We do have a bullish cross on the MACD, and I'm happy to point out as well, as after quite a bit of consolidation in these lines. So this is a chart to watch. I think this is the most important chart to watch in all of crypto. The next levels are the February 2018 dead cat bounce, which is when, after the crypto market blew up essentially in December 27 or excuse me, Bitcoin kind of blew up in December 2017, but then Ether made huge gains against it before falling back down again. We have to breach that. We have to breach the wick, and then it's the all-time high. I think this will ultimately, and potentially even this cycle, go to 0.15, which would be about 5 points, 5 solid points above its all-time high, or excuse me, 3.
Yeah, I mean, what is Ethereum still roughly half the value of Bitcoin at this point?
In terms of market cap, yes.
Market cap. Yeah, I would say this cycle I could see going to 2/3, 3/4 at most.
Yeah. Yeah. This cycle, I don't think we're going to flip. I think that will probably happen in the next few years. But this is an important chart to watch. And to me, this screams that you want to be looking for alt gems, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and some other smaller cap coins, which you can find on straight up just places like Coinbase. You don't have to dig too far to find them.
Again, Mike, to loosely transition to another topic, and I might actually create a segue here.
Sure.
We're seeing very good movement in the stock market today.
Yes.
And I don't think we can talk about the crypto markets without talking about stock markets like as mutually separate things anymore. Because ever since the coronavirus and this pandemic, we are seeing these things trade side by side in some respects.
Yes.
Russell 2000 and Bitcoin both had phenomenal 2020s, and then going into February for Russell 2000, May for Bitcoin. So we are seeing appetite for risk and speculation over the last year and a half, 2 years go much higher. And we saw a very nasty, Omicron spook sell-off over the last week, coinciding with people freaking out about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as well. And where are we today in the S&P 500? Well, actually, I haven't checked in the last couple of hours.
Well, let's take a look. Why don't we? We are having a hugely bullish green candle today. I mean, what is even this looks like?
Yeah, NASDAQ is over 3% today.
3% move. Yeah.
S&P 500 probably close. It's at up 2% today. Yeah. So the S&P 500 is basically back at all-time highs again. It is just within a notch.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't need to do much more to get there. And it's a really good sign because it seems that the market was initially spooked by Omicron, but there's a lot coming out that it's not a terribly dangerous variant of the disease, though it is very transmissible. And, that should be cause for concern, but
it should be. And during these ultra speculative environments, and I know that Mike Carr, one of our options gurus, has talked about the S&P 500 probably doubling over the next 2.5, 3 years.
Right.
Just basically continuation of just this irrational exuberance that we're seeing because these bubbles could stretch out a lot farther than most people can imagine. We are going to see people more emotional during this period. Emotions get extended. Their appetite for greed is going to extend, and it's also going to make them have these moments of clarity, let's call them, where they wake up and realize, oh my God, I've been an absolute idiot. I need to sell, and reduce my exposure. Mm-hmm. And we saw this with Omicron, third variant. I mean, around Thanksgiving, it was just a bummer. You know what I mean? And I mean, I was feeling it too. I was just like, God, is this thing ever going to end? Yeah. And of course, here we are a week and a half later realizing, oh, the sky isn't falling. Yes. And of course, we knew the sky wasn't falling. But we also want to stay one step ahead of other investors who we think might be afraid the sky is falling. And so we sell to try and get ahead of other people, which begets more selling and then an overreaction, oversold conditions. And now here we are back. People are still greedy. Risk is still on. What we're seeing in the stock market today, now, of course, we're recording this on Tuesday. It's going to go out on Wednesday, is, to me, a good sign that you stay risk on. Don't sell your crypto. Of course, sell it and then buy it right back so you can, capture the watchful benefits.
That makes sense for you, yeah.
But I agree with you. Ethereum by 5,000 end of the year. I think we could probably see Bitcoin spit out another new high by the end of the year. I'm still holding on to my BITO calls And I know we probably want to talk about that in a second here too.
Yes, yes. And I think the slower that it happens, the better. Patience is a virtue in many aspects of life, but especially in the crypto markets, because I've been buying and holding since 2016, and that's where that life-changing money we always talk about came from, really. So
I've been trading since 2017, and Mike has made a lot more money than I have. Let's just put it that way.
Sometimes sitting on your hands is the best trading maneuver. One thing I do want to point on SPY before we move on, my long-term blue line that I never stop screaming about, that is going to be resistance if and when we get back up there. And even though we'll be at new highs, we do still have this to think about. So let's just keep that in mind. Maybe consider taking a little bit off the table if and when we get up to these 480, 482 handles. Just something to be aware of. So what other huge thing happened since we recorded the last Claptrap?
Right. So speaking of my BITO calls that I am not putting down for the count yet, the last time we did this was before BITO, the first US Bitcoin linked ETF arrived on the market. And this is another huge thing for the market that is very, 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 very bullish. So we've got institutional money coming in. We've had some people being able to invest in Bitcoin through grayscale funds. Now it's easier than ever for everybody who has a brokerage account or a 401k or whatever the heck you want to buy into Bitcoin's exposure with BITO.
Yeah, it's important to know you're not buying Bitcoin. There's no, and it sounds insane to say it, physical backing of Bitcoin, because it's based on the futures contracts that trade that started trading actually back in 20.
It's like Inception. It's like a digital copy of something digital.
Yeah.
Or
very Incepty. But I think 10 times more exciting than there being a futures-backed Bitcoin ETF is something you just said, Chris. This is an optionable Bitcoin ETF. You can now trade options on Bitcoin. You can now take the volatility of Bitcoin and leverage it even further with the power of options, which is obviously our bread and butter here on this channel and on the True Options Masters newsletter.
Right. So this is actually what we're most excited about right now, because it doesn't matter if you're a Bitcoin bull or a bear, because what everyone can agree on is that if you want to make money in options, right, at least on the buy side, you need volatility.
Yeah.
And what is more volatile than Bitcoin? It's going to be practically more volatile than any stock that's on the market. And because it's a $1 trillion thing now, you know, it's one of the 10 most expensive things in the world that you can invest in. The liquidity is going to be outrageous.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a ton of liquidity. You can move in and out this thing without anyone detecting it. Very easy to buy and sell. And you can play both sides of it. So we've actually tasked Mike Carr with figuring out a way to do this. And Mike, I know we're very excited because he's been talking to us and he back tested this already on the long side. His back test shows he would have been able to capture, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, 85% of the upside with only 10% of the risk. Yeah. 10% of the downside. Is that correct?
I thought he said 90% of the upside in a bull market and then sidestepping everything but 10% of the downside in a bear market, and that's using just spot Bitcoin.
Right.
That doesn't apply options.
That doesn't apply options, right? So no people here is like, well, why would I care if it doesn't capture all the upside? Think about this. He's talking about when you run a back test, you want to actually look at like the options on each trade. You have to manually calculate that stuff. It's a real slog, and so we normally don't do that when we conduct back tests. But it's very easy to look at a back test and just figure out buying in and out of the underlying asset. So he did this Bitcoin, obviously, because BITO hasn't been on the market very, very long. But what he found is that with his back test, just buying in and out of Bitcoin, he could have captured 85% of the upside while only being exposed to 10% of the downside. For options, this is exciting because with options, 85% of the upside, well, you can now potentially make, with options, you can leverage moves 2, 3, 5, 10x or more.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a strategy we're coming up with for, Bitcoin bulls and bears alike, believers and atheists, to just make potentially an absolute killing on this. So we're going to be testing this internally amongst ourselves for a few weeks, make sure this is something that we're comfortable rolling out to people. But we're very, very excited. It's just, Mike, it's just cool. You can trade options on Bitcoin now. Like, I feel like I've been waiting for this for years.
Yeah.
It's finally here.
No, it's really exciting, and I think what even excites me more is the potential to make make money on Bitcoin in a prolonged crypto bear market. Because make no mistake, one is coming. This stuff is not going to go up forever. There's going to be a period, probably 2-3 years long, where there's a lot of pain. And if you're sitting on Bitcoin all that time, you'll probably be rewarded eventually. But if you're actively trading it with put options, then you can potentially make a ton of money, even if Bitcoin falls another 70% in the next
Yeah,
drop.
it's not that hard to stay ahead of this stuff because most people who are trading Bitcoin are emotional doofuses. They are the dumb money. They are very easily persuaded by rampant price action. If things are going up, they're going to make it go higher, and they're going to make it very easy for you to be able to call tops in short term.
Yeah.
And then when it just crashes, if you have an opportunity during market hours when the stuff is crashing to buy calls, we could see some absolutely amazing trades here. So we're very, very excited about this potential.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're going to be hearing about that a lot more soon. We're still working on it with Mike, making sure that the system works and makes people money. And then we'll probably start sharing it in True Options Masters. Now, we have a couple final things. I know this one's probably running a little bit long, but we're making up for lost time. I want to point out two real standout coins that just totally shrugged off the Black Friday sale. So while a lot of coins are still struggling to recoup some of their losses, a lot of ones are approaching new all-time highs. I mean, let's be real. This dropped about 40% on Black Friday, but we're already setting new local highs and we're approaching new all-time highs. This is Matic Network. What this is what they call a layer 2 for Ethereum, which is essentially, and I'm not the sharpest tech person on the subject, but I'll try to do my best with it. It's essentially a side chain where Ethereum transactions can be done off the main network. And they can be done a lot quicker and a lot more cheaply. So if by bridging your wallet to this network, you can do all your business on that chain instead and do it a lot more cheaply. Loopring as well, definitely felt the volatility a little bit more, but it had such a huge run in November, and it's just catching this 50-day simple moving average. And just
you've seen this one at the top of Coinbase quite a bit recently.
Yes. And that reminds me of our rule. If you see a new coin listing on Coinbase, just buy it and be prepared to sell it in the next week or month. So I just wanted to point a couple of these out. I think if Ethereum is going to continue to do well, these are going to continue to do well. And if you want to leverage your exposure to the whole Ethereum idea, it's this kind of stuff that you want to be looking into. There are these competitors like Solana and Atom, and Avalanche is another new one that I have right here. They've all been doing pretty well lately. But if you're believing in Ethereum, you want to be invested in these layer 2 coins with small bits of exposure in these guys as well. Much higher risk, much higher reward in these competitors. So to wrap up today, I want to challenge our viewers today. We've all been hearing about Metaverse. Facebook changed its name to Meta. Every big tech CEO and their dog has been talking about Metaverse on their earnings calls. Nobody seems to agree on what it means or what it is. And for a while, I was like, this is nonsense. This is a nonsense scam that's going to make all this crypto stuff seem real rough to the masses, because now it's just getting more complicated. But I found something kind of neat that I want to share called showunft.com/metaverse. So this might take a minute to load up, but I think it's probably the coolest showcase of what a metaverse sort of space could look like that I've seen. And what it is essentially an online virtual art gallery where people are displaying their NFT art in a public space that's curated by, I guess, Shoyu NFT. And it kind of rotates every couple of weeks or so. So once it loads up, you'll get a good idea of what it looks like. But what I envision for the future is that artists are going to be able to create things like this to show and sell their work in an online immersive space that's, you know, like going to a real art gallery. And I just think that's going to unlock a lot of potential in the online art markets, because right now, to participate in the art market, you have to be a pretty high roller in terms of net worth. You know, you need to be able to travel and meet these artists. But first of all, just look at the fidelity of this thing. This is just running in a web browser. And I'm moving around with the arrow keys and I'm looking around, and you could just go to the gallery. And we'll just give that a second. Bear with us, folks. This is probably a lot to take in. We'll go for the free roam. This is just a little bit of, this is sort of a description on the current gallery showing. But yeah. Oh. This is essentially what it looks like. And it's going to lag a little bit because I'm also on a Ring Central call with Chris. But you can walk around here and look at art installations that are all NFTs. And I'm sure you could go somewhere and buy these. This one appears to be a woman eating blackberries. I'm not a big art guy, so I'm not sure what's great about that. But there's some
hashtag art.
It's very hashtag art. But when I saw this, it all sort of clicked for me that when we think about metaverse as basically being immersive online spaces, it doesn't mean we have to stick a headset on ourselves. If we have the ability to make this stuff in a web browser without launching a separate application, and artists could create these, make the gallery look however they want, and then sell their own art through it, peer-to-peer, without going through an auction house or having to do anything special. I think this is the strongest example of what a metaverse can look like that I've seen so far. So I just wanted to share that.
So I want to address an objection while you're walking around this beautiful virtual museum, Mike. Is I follow this page on Instagram. It's called Metaverse. The first E in verse is a 3. Mm-hmm. And it was a funny little video that they showed about, it was like Bill Gates talking to not Jay Leno, who was the other late night talk guy back in the 90s.
Oh, Letterman,
thank you. Yeah,
Love
Conan's mentor, basically.
Yeah.
So Bill Gates is on with Letterman, and Letterman is just telling him that he just doesn't get this internet stuff, because he was reading that, like, oh, you're going to be able to basically listen to a live baseball game on the internet. And Letterman's just like, yeah, but isn't that what a radio's for? And then, of course, everybody chuckles. You hear the audience like hooting and hollering and clapping and cheering. Just like, yeah, it's just like this stuff. Yeah, stick it to Bill Gates. And, you know, Bill Gates is kind of chuckles. He's like, well, there's one important difference is you can listen to it live, but you can also listen to it afterwards whenever you want. And this is something that I think people need to understand, because they're going to look at this. You're walking around a museum, Mike, and I'm going to a museum in a couple of hours here. I've never been to the Norton Museum of Art in West Palm Beach, and I realize I've lived here way too long to have not done that. So I'm gonna go check it out. So people are gonna walk around this thing and just think, what's the point? What's the point if I can just go to an actual museum where real art with real paint and oils and colors have been used? And I think what people need to understand is that before this stuff releases its full potential, it has to prove that it can replace existing things.
Yeah.
So just as the internet, you know, yeah, you can listen to a baseball game live or after it's done. And yeah, your experience isn't going to be really that much radically different from the radio, whereas you're walking around a museum online, Mike. But this is just, we have to go here first before we can go to the next level.
Absolutely.
Now, with that said, don't buy the FOMO, because obviously the market Zuck just threw a huge curveball this year out of nowhere. He just decided he's going to pull a Google and rename his entire company.
Yeah.
I think it's very exciting. I think it's honestly probably very long-term bullish for Facebook. I think this, honestly, I'm thinking now they could maybe eventually become a larger company than Google at this point. I don't really know what their market caps are right now, but there aren't that many crypto metaverse plays. We saw them get absolutely crushed in this recent sell-off because again, it's one of these wake up moments where just like your bubble of irrational exuberance gets popped and you realize this stuff is still futuristic. It's still way off. So people are going to speculate in this stuff when they feel greedy, and they're going to sell the living daylights out of it when they're fearful. So be careful with this stuff. It's going to be among the more volatile crypto plays probably, because it is something that people want to get ahead of. But a lot of that is due to short-term hype. And remember, new technologies, metaverse, they go through hype cycles before it ever really becomes anywhere close to being something mainstream.
Definitely.
Now, we have seen quite a bit of groundwork laid for this stuff over the last decade with, I'm blanking on so much stuff today, Mike. What was that game with the blocks? Not Roblox, but...
Well, there's Roblox, there's Decentraland,
Decentraland,
which is a big
yeah, what is the one that people play all the time? It was like a game, basically.
Fortnite?
No, not Fortnite. What's the other one? I know we've got people on the other side listening to us screaming.
You're not thinking about Minecraft, are you?
Minecraft, exactly what I'm thinking of. Like probably initial like groundwork, laying like the brick for this entire movement.
Definitely.
So it's not that this is coming out of nowhere. We have seen some foundation get built. Some of this technology is still, it does exist. And as you're seeing right here, it's a little further along than some people might want to think, but it is also still very, 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 very far away from the kind of truly immersive, stuff that Zuck is talking about. So take it all with a grain of salt.
Absolutely.
Long term, this is very good stuff, but again, you can also get your butt handed to you if you load up on all this stuff. I own a little bit of Decentraland. I will probably buy more at some point. I'm not really in a huge hurry to, though.
Definitely. The last thing I do want to point out about this gallery, you might have seen me do it before, and I think this is what's going to set it apart from going to a physical gallery. You click on this art, you decide that you like it, and you want to see how much it costs, you click this link down here, and it takes you right to an OpenSea page where you can make an offer on it by connecting your MetaMask wallet. This is something anyone can do, not high-rolling art collectors. This is if you have a web browser and you see a piece of art in a gallery that you like and you want to own it. If you want to own an NFT of it, let's be clear, the ideas of NFTs and ownership are very, very complicated right now. But we're more than likely going to a world where anyone's going to be able to do this sort of stuff.
And what I can imagine people are going to do is people are going to buy this stuff and they're going to have a screen in their home.
Yeah.
And they're going to project or display their NFT on it like a normal piece of art.
Absolutely.
Like this is what people are going to do to start showing off.
And you could think that's dumb or you could think it's brilliant, but what do we always say? You want to be invested in the space somewhere because things are changing. And the simplest way to do it is to buy the majors and sit on your hands.
Well, I mean, in its most basic level, Mike, like I'm in the market for a new TV and I want a TV that like shows me pretty pictures when the TV is off of, like nature and oceans and things like that. Because I like to feel nice when I'm home. And so I don't want a dead screen. I want something to be playing on that screen. And this is just another version of that.
Yeah.
This is the technology that's available to us now. It's cool. And this is a way that you can actually kind of bring this stuff to the real world, if there is a real world anymore.
Well, that's scary on its own. But I guess
on that note,
yes, let's wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. Because we have lots of great content coming your way. And of course, subscribe to Two Options Masters, where you're getting the best options trading newsletter in the world, 6 days a week, with the best ideas from some of the top option gurus in the world for that.
And if you like this video, please share it on your Facebook, if anyone's still on Facebook these days, your Twitter, your what have you. Again, Mike and I aren't experts. We're just a couple of young schmucks who have made a lot of money trading crypto, and we analyze it for you from a very basic level because you don't really have to be an expert to trade this stuff or to make money with this stuff, as we try to prove to you. So again, if you like this, we try to put as much much good content into this as we can, and try to cover all of the big picture stuff that you need to be focused on, from smaller stuff like SHIB to longer term trends like metaverse, and why we think that the bull market is going to be extended, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, subscribe, like, share, comment.
All the things you always hear when you watch YouTube videos.
Yes. And we'll be back with more. We'll try not to go a month and a half with another one of these next time.
No, I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about very, very soon. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll be back with you soon.